Hello, welcome everybody. We are doing 30 Days of Dopamine, and we've got Kristin Barrus with us here, and today we're going to talk about third spaces. Hi, Kristin.
Hi.
So, tell us a little bit about who you are and why I just randomly slid into your DMs and be like, hey,
Yeah.
do you want to talk to
You're
me?
so awesome. Not so random. So I'm Kristin Barrus. I'm an academic quilt maker in the Western US. And that means I made quilts for about 20 years and taught a little bit. And then I got more interested in what was happening behind the quilts, particularly with the people making quilts, and decided to continue my education in a master's program at UNL and worked on material culture and textile studies and studied QuiltCon and as an ethnography, which is an anthropological term about just studying what people are doing and what we learn about what they're doing. And now I'm working with the University of Leicester on a doctorate on in museum studies on women entrepreneurs in the quilt world today. So
Cool.
I love quilt makers.
Well, and I always think it's so interesting. So I am an alum of UNL of University of Nebraska at Lincoln, where she got her master's degree. And I
Uh,
always thought it was so interesting that so my undergrad degree is in textile and apparel design. I play with fabric, and I asked them, I was like, okay, can I go do quilt studies as a master? And they're like, no, like no, you're not
That's funny.
equipped. You're not equipped for this program. It's a very, so when you do quilt studies and stuff like that, people sort of think that it's like, oh, I'm going to play with art. It is not a fine arts degree. It is very much history,
Oh,
sociology, women's studies, gender studies, like all of those things. You need to have, it's a
yes.
very different sort
Yeah.
of thing. So how did you, so tell us more
And
about,
and you can do both.
you
You
can,
can do
yes,
both.
you can.
Yeah, you
Well,
can
they
do
didn't
both.
tell me
Mhm.
that, but you
Yeah.
know, whatever.
And yeah, sorry, they would now. They
Oh,
would
well,
now.
that's
Check
good.
check back in. I highly recommend everybody go. They have a certificate program where you take, I think, 3 or 4 classes, and then they also have the masters. Um, and within that department, they have fashion design now is in that
Yes,
department. So
yes,
yeah,
they do.
check back.
They,
It's great.
yeah.
It's great. Well, the way you can do a project, one of my good friends is starting the program there, and she's doing a project based. I happen to be thesis based because that's what I liked. So
Mhm.
you can do a project based in the material culture textile studies. So the advantage is you're looking at it from an art lens. So
Yes.
you're aware of what's going on in the art world today, and you're looking at the academic studies that have already been done that are anywhere adjacent. So like women's studies,
Mhm.
yes. The larger art world, yes. The craft economy, like right now, entrepreneurialism.
Yeah,
I like to bring fan studies in because I think fan studies is totally what we do in the quilt world. We fan over designers, fabric
it's true.
designers, all of it. So
It's true. As
there's
like
a lot
it's
of cool, yeah,
we're
a lot
our
of cool
own
art.
little society of I'm not gonna say weirdos because I think that has a bad
Yes.
connotation, even though I would wear that badge proudly. Is like we're just a little bit different. Once you drink the Kool-Aid, then you're in, and then you start looking at guess who's on live and look what I just got. Like it is very much that sort of
Mhm.
thing. So tell us about your
Very
speaking of
fanish.
fangirling over people, fanboying, fanning over people. QuiltCon
Mhm.
is like because that's what you're
Yes.
a big part of your thesis, right? Because we were talking about, okay, back up, sorry, I know I'm all over the place. Third spaces. So I talk about third
Yes.
spaces when I do different things, but you tell me what a third space is. Tell everybody else.
Yeah. Third space is so interesting to me. And I think it's an interesting term we're using today to talk about things that are really old fashioned. That idea of going to your public library and being involved in a workshop or a class or taking, if you have young children, to reading time. And we watched it on TV. Third spaces I would consider like Mr. Rogers and Reading Rainbow. I think those were all the digital third spaces early on that now we're trying to find in real life.
Yeah.
So in the quilt world, like my girlfriends come over once a month in my studio and we sew, and we've done it for over a decade. That to me
Mhm.
is a really personal third space.
Right.
And going to your quilt guild and getting involved there, third space, going to a one-off retreat or a workshop. But QuiltCon is one of the ultimate third spaces. And I would say any quilt convention, or even quilt crews, but the regular occurring quilt conventions, I think, are a really unique third space that's fascinating to be a part of and to study. A
I
lot
yeah,
goes on there.
I have yet to go. I was like, I'm always worried about
Oh.
traveling in February. I was like,
Yes, I missed it one year for the snow. Yeah, I'm
yeah,
with you.
yeah. But so like when we're talking about third space and we're
Mhm.
talking about, all the things that you've mentioned are, your home get-togethers, conferences,
Mhm.
even things where you're low key just getting together and do a common purpose. So I would say a third space is something that people get together to either create community or participate in a common goal.
Yep,
And conversation happens, but is not necessarily the only thing that happens.
correct.
Um, it's open to everybody.
Yep.
So
And
we're
you could be, some third spaces are, and I think the whole goal is sometimes they're personal people you know, and sometimes they're not.
right.
And that's what makes them interesting,
Yeah.
really.
And it's also um what is the other there's eight bullet points or something about accessibility. It's like there's not so like for quilting, I would say a good third space is something that lets in the beginners as well as the people who are, the
Yep.
Uber users.
Oh,
Like,
that part is so crucial.
mhm,
Those connections, so crucial to have that shared knowledge of that both sides share. It's not one directional. That's the
right.
cool thing about the quilt world, and we see it in third spaces. The quilt world's not top down. It's very organic, foundational. Everybody has something to share and to give and to bring based on how they interact digitally, what their
Right.
life experiences are, how long they've been making or not making, their new approach or their standard approach. Yeah,
Oh, I
we
like
need
that.
all of
New versus standard approach. I like that because no one likes to be t saying or be told that they're doing something the old way. I was like,
it.
I'm
Yeah,
not doing it the old way. And also,
no,
people don't like to be told that this is the only way. So,
yeah,
standard versus new. I like that. That's good.
yeah, yeah, yep,
So,
yep.
when you were looking at QuiltCon in particular, because I know that's what your thesis on, what were some sort of things that you found and sort of, building that community or the
Yeah,
changing stuff?
absolutely. Absolutely. And it's cool when we talk about my research on QuiltCon, and there was the important thing to note is while I had this huge support of the MQG, I am not speaking for them. I'm
Right.
not speaking for everyone who went to QuiltCon. I'm speaking for my observation at that time when this was like a month before COVID shut down. So we were in a lot of ways in a
Oh,
very different world. They were very lucky that QuiltCon was in February and not March. So
it's
it was
true.
my first time at QuiltCon, and so I was studying it right before the world drastically changed. And it would be interesting to look at some of the similar things. I've gone most times since. So I'm not speaking for anyone that was there. I'm just saying here's the patterns and how they reflect some academic lenses.
Sure.
So one of the things that was really cool, and I didn't know about this before I went, the energy of QuiltCon, and everybody says how it's exhausting and you have to pace yourself in water. And a lot of that is an anthropological term we call communitas. And
Okay.
that means everybody gets together, and it's kind of like when you shake up the bottom of the can of pop and you open it and it like explodes in fizz. And that happens on a really big level at QuiltCon, and it happens on small levels.
Hmm.
Um, I saw it a ton with the mini swaps. There was
Okay.
so much energy and excitement, and these strangers coming together, and then everybody showing, and all of a sudden, these personal barriers were broken down, and they're taking pictures and they're touching each other and hugging and
Right.
sharing work with even people they weren't exchanging with. And as I was moving through it and asking people kind of quietly, "Hey, I'm with this university, and can I ask you a few questions about your experience?" As I'm walking through the aisles of the vendor mall, and everyone was so friendly, and they were like, "Oh, sure, let me just tell you." And I thought, and they're telling me kind of personal stuff, not
Yeah.
inappropriate, but just like, and not oversharing, but just this community of you check certain social mores at the door when you go to these events,
Yeah.
and then you bring this excitement, and that's communitas. It's this shared experience where then the energy becomes higher because you're all doing it together. And that's one of the cool things about QuiltCon that I'm not sure you could ever plan and navigate for. And there
Hmm.
are some triggers to create that, and they continue to add things like these special meetup rooms, and
Right.
various evening activities that they add, and the great different revolving themed side exhibits, not side exhibits, but secondary exhibits that
Right.
are cool. But that's what really hit me, and it adds to the exhaustion. And it gets to the point then when, as you're walking through and looking at the quilts in the show, some of them resonate with you emotionally. And I, at that time that year, it was grayscale quilts for um, it was like battered women places and shelters, and that they were donating or selling them, not selling, they were donating them to, the quilt groups had done. And
Right.
I was so moved by the emotionality, and it added to my communitas, and I found myself in tears in some of the quiet places there. And that's all part of what these third spaces do on a large scale on conventions like this. That's one of the aspects that I found.
Yeah, I remember reading for like when I was doing research for third spaces for something else. It's very much that community experience and lets you have, like you said, that sort of larger um it's not therapy, but that sort of communal experience. It's the same thing as like going to a rock concert or
Mhm.
okay, Nebraska, the Huskers, the football game.
Yep.
It is being part of a collective
Yes.
where you are collective as a group, as an entity. It is not
Yeah.
us versus them. It is all of us coming together around a shared love of something.
Yeah. And I get that some people come to events like QuiltCon and other quilt events and don't feel like they were seen or that there was a place for them. I get that.
Yeah.
And I think we all have a duty to, as individuals, when we show up for Communitas, when we show up at these events, whether it's we're going to a big site that something terrible happened at, or we're going to um, like a fan experience where we're visiting some bar that some show was filmed in that's important to people.
Right.
Whatever we're going to, we as individuals have a responsibility to see everyone there and be a part of that and not be exclusive, which I think is something that the quilt world has the capacity to do,
It's
to
true.
be welcoming and see everybody and bring that in.
It's yeah, and there's so much. So as of the time that we're recording this, Joanne's is officially no more. And that has been
Mhm.
something that has been part of the online discourse is that people don't always feel welcome, even though they're stitchers, crafters, sewers, whatever. They don't necessarily feel that going to their local quilt shop is the right place for them. And there's a ton of reasons for that. So, that not that if it's not the right fit, it's not the right fit. Like you don't have to be everything to everybody, but when you have people that are sort of mourning the loss of that communitas is like there's because we know the Joanne stores had classes. We know that they love their employees. They're just like we love our quilt shop employees. Is like they've sort of felt that loss, and I feel like there's a little bit of a collective grief moment happening there too, and it's trying to figure out how to work through it with these worlds that are sort of coming together is like fusing them.
Yes, these big, big changes. Yeah, Joanne's is an interesting thing because that was really one individual going, having an experience with whoever they touched and coming out versus a
Mhm.
quilt convention where you might make new friends or you've come with friends. There's this idea of a girlfriend getaway, which I realize it's not all women at
Right, right.
QuiltCon. But the point is it's a pilgrimage. You're leaving your sewing space
Mhm.
and you're going on a journey. Think like Lord of the Rings, like all the great novels, Narnia. You're
Right.
leaving, you're an individual, you joined a group at some point and you go and have this group experience and then you come back changed and you bring that into what you have. And I
Mhm.
think even driving to a quilt store or a Joann's, that's a mini pilgrimage that's important to you. That whole process, you meaning the people who do
Yep.
this, it's important to us to do that.
Yep.
And having that space not there is unnerving and unsettling. And quilt stores, I love local quilt stores. And I think the owners don't always get enough credit, the pressure that they're under and the sales margins
It's
and
true.
all, I mean, they are absolutely the middlemen. And sometimes we forget that middle people and we think they're the top and they're pushing down. And we forget that there's this whole
Yeah.
mechanism going on above them that affects very much what they're able to project through their stores. And then they hire employees and they're not able to hire employees for, huge full-time living wage, great careers
Right.
because they just can't. There's just not the profit margin. So there's a lot of turnover and the culture will shift. And when I was doing a project for Henry Ford and they wanted some surveys and one of the questions we asked was for people to list their favorite quilt stores online or in person.
Okay.
And a lot of people listed quilt stores, their local quilt stores that had closed. And again, this
Oh,
was right as COVID was happening. So
yeah.
some of the stores were closing fast and
Yeah.
some had. And they were like grieving. It was still. And some of the stores, a lot of them they listed kind of were the same stores. and it had been closed for 3 or 4 years, and they're still talking about the loss of this store.
Yeah.
So in the way that I think we're going to talk, some people will talk about Joann's as
Well,
well.
I think it's all part and parcel of the same thing. It's like, we talk about 30 days of dopamine, how crafting is good for you. It's good for your brain. It gives you all of the happy chemicals and it does all sorts of things like flow states and spark, and we can talk about all of that junk. But the reality is that we have just been in unprecedented times for a while now. And so we've just got a lot of people that are searching for their community because things are just we're still on the roller coaster. We're just bumping around.
We are. We are. And I'm so glad people are searching because that means
Yes.
people still want it and they're willing to do the work.
Yes. Okay. So doing the work. So what do you think that is? Like if we're working, okay, you and me, I show up at your house
Yeah.
and we're gonna do our own thing and we're gonna build our own third space. What does that look like for quilters? It's like we talked about the people, like you've got your friend group that comes in. It was like what would we
Mhm.
do to like make our own little crafting haven, quilting,
Yeah.
sewing haven?
Yeah. I think a big part of it is starting your own group or guild in
Yeah.
your communities. We don't have enough of those, in my opinion. And they're easy and everybody can share the load.
Yes.
Everybody can share the load. It's not a big deal to do. And we just need more community center gathering. There's lots of places that are free or low cost
Hmm.
that we just need to be deliberate. And when we show up, you can have a common theme like maybe your modern quilt makers or maybe your solids only, or you can have a common theme if you want. That's not exclusive. You can say, this is what we're setting out to do.
Right.
That's okay. I think the important part is for us to take the initiative to make our own third spaces. And
Yes.
the fact that people are mourning Joann's or whatever it is that they wish about it, it's time to get moving and find your people and put a
Mhm.
note out at your local quilt store or online
Yep.
and get people to come together and then keep doing it. It's that consistency. There's plenty of spaces to rent or to be in for free in a lot of communities, but let's keep doing that and make that successful. We aren't great at having regular community spaces where we gather and make on a regular basis,
It's true.
and we could be better at that for sure. We really need that. That's the foundation of quilt making. I mean, and when we look at like when they look at things from 20,000 years ago in thread, and string, it had different markers in it and early weavings, which tell us from the very beginning people were doing this together. It is
Yes.
in our DNA to make together the talking and then the way it affects our art and makes our art better. We can do it. We just need to keep showing up for each other and share the load.
It's true because we don't want any of the good stuff that you get from a place. As much as I love all my places, it is not the place that gives you the good stuff. It's
Mhm.
the people that you're with, it's the
Yep.
activities that you're doing. And
Yeah.
that means that all of those things can move with you. So if you
Yes.
have,
That's great.
a space, if your local shop has had some hard times or is doing something that you don't love anymore, then you can
Yep.
do something else. If you were the videos that I've seen of people lighting a candle in front of their Joann's stores, like making a little you know we remember sort of thing. Like if you're having those sorts of moments, is like you can take all of those feelings with you and do something new, do something different. But don't I
Yeah.
just don't want people
Yeah.
to lose that because there's again, this is 30 days of dopamine. This is the making is good
We
for you.
need it.
So
We need it. We need it. We need it together. We need it
yes.
not individually. We need it together.
Yes. And even the other thing too, so just because when you talked about when you were gathering information and pulling data for your thesis for QuiltCon, and it was right before the whole panini. So I will say, I was like coming from what is called a medically complex family, I was like
Okay.
having a virtual third space.
So
And
important.
that's important too, because if I have small kids. I was like, there's lots of reasons why people can't get to some place on the
Mhm.
same schedule as someone
Mhm.
else. It's like, it doesn't matter what it is, but there's a lot of people who want to make out there. I want to be friends with you. I was like,
Yes.
let's just go bond over fangirling over the latest collection drop. I was like, let's go do it together. And
Mhm. And it can be virtual. When I
yes.
was looking at this same survey with for the Henry Ford, one of the questions we asked was several different series of questions about how people join a community. And about a third of the people who responded, there was thousands of respondents. So thank you if you responded, anybody who's watching this.
Yep.
And they never left their home to participate, but they very much felt like they were part of the movement, and part in that case, the modern quilt movement, but part of quilt making today. So
Yep.
that is one of the cool things about quilt making today is people can never go anywhere and never leave and still feel a part of it.
Yes.
And there's still that third space online that feeds some people in different phases or with
Mhm.
different roadblocks or barriers and still be a part of it and get that dopamine hit or that creative influence that affects what they're doing in great ways.
Yeah, internet friends, like we have people talk about craft deserts where they're not able to get stuff, or the people around you just don't get it.
Yeah.
I was like, that's okay.
Hmm.
We'll find our people. We'll always come together.
Yes,
So
yes. In
tell
so
us.
many ways. I mean, that's how you and I got connected.
I know.
Absolutely. Which
I
is
I
great.
have no shame. I will send memes. I will slide into DMs. I will do all of the things. So it's like I realize not everyone
I
operates on
love
that
it. I
level,
love it.
but that's okay. So yes.
I think a lot of people do. It's totally fine.
It's good. It's good. So tell us if you've got any new work coming out, or I know you have articles out in different publications, things like
Yeah,
that. Where can
sure.
people find you and learn more about
Yeah,
all of
you're
your good
great.
stuff?
KristinBarrus.com is my website, and my Instagram's my first and last name as well, and I have a link tree there. Right now, I'm working on. I was so impressed after being at QuiltCon and thinking through things for my next work. I thought I really want to study particularly the women and kind of step away from the modern movement
Mhm.
specifically and just study women, American women in Gen X who
Mhm.
are entrepreneurs in the quilt world today. I feel like there's a lot of them, and they're kind of the meat of what's going on right now, and I've learned a lot from the generation before us, and there's a lot of there we're doing things differently than I'm seeing millennials and some of the Gen Zers join, which is just it's all so cool, and
Yeah.
the water is great. So I'm looking at them and learning a lot of things about what they're doing and how they're navigating their lives outside of quilt making and these
Mhm.
careers, and with shared space and wherever they live, if they live with people, and
Right.
different timelines like you're talking about of their life and what's important to them. And it's just the takeaway is they're really, really inspiring, and some pretty cool things have come out of how they run these businesses and why they run them. And so that's what I'm working on. It'll get
Cool.
published early next year. Yep.
Exciting. Cool.
Yeah.
And you have other can people read your thesis? It's like because
Yes.
you everybody always wants to ask, or they always feel like I can't read it. It's not published anywhere. It's like I'm pretty certain you
I
can
know.
get
Yeah.
copies and read
That's
theses.
one of the open text things. In my Instagram, Kristin Barrus,
Okay.
on my link tree, it has all the publications and links to each of them, whether you have to buy the magazine or so Nebraska has a digital commons. You can read it on there, read the intro and um, skip down to like the findings, skip through all the like academic
The
view and stuff.
the
Check it out.
TLDR section, too long didn't read.
Yes, yes. Skip through that part, get to the intro and the findings, and it's cool. Yeah, again, really inspiring people. We have amazing makers who are eager to join each other and to share what they have.
Right.
It's very inspiring to go to these places like this. Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you. Thanks for joining us for 30 Days of Dopamine. And I hope everyone out there is inspired to do something, get out either virtually or in person. And, because it's hot outside, you don't always want to leave your house. I understand. So, either way, go get out, go find your people, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.
Thanks.